Today, I'm so happy to welcome back my recurring guest, Barbara Karnes. And it's so great to have a chance to sit down and talk with Barbara again. If you're not familiar with Barbara's work, and I always imagine everyone listening has heard of Barbara, but just in case, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her. She's an internationally recognized author, speaker, thought leader, and expert on end of life care and the dynamics of dying. Barbara was recognized in 2018 as a hospice innovator by the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization. She's the author of what we in hospice refer to as the Little Blue Hospice book, named Gone from My Sight, The Dying Experience, and as well as probably a dozen books, right, Barbara, that you've written. And if you're not familiar with Barbara's little guidebooks. You need to know about them if you're a death doula or you work anywhere in hospice, because these books are perfect for bedside carers who are taking care of someone at the end of life, because they're short and simple to read, written at a fifth grade level. It's something that a family member could pick up in the middle of the night when they haven't slept for 2 or 3 days and they have a question and they can't figure out what's going on, and they could get the answer from these books. And I really encourage hospices, have them on hand, give them to your patients and families, because you will make a huge difference in their hospice experience. So just to put in a plug for Barbara's books, which you can find at bkbooks.com. And the Little Blue Book, it's published in 12 languages, sold over 30 million copies worldwide, something everyone should have. But also, as well, as I said, probably a dozen other books that Barbara's written that you should know about. So go to bkbooks.com and take a look at all the amazing work that Barbara has done over the years. And so, Barbara, welcome and thanks for joining me.
Uh, Hello there. And again, and I love it when we get together and talk. So thanks for inviting me back.
Well, you're so
Look
welcome.
forward to this.
Yeah, both of us really enjoy this. And our conversations have really focused on hospice because that's where both of us have worked. And I think both of us recognize there's a lot of misinformation out there in the public about hospice, and sometimes just a lack of information. People just don't understand hospice or how it works. So Barbara and I sit down for these chats and we just talk all about our experiences, what we know about hospice, to try to inform people so that more people feel comfortable using hospice and getting connected with the services of hospice. And today we thought we would talk a little bit about the fact that hospice is team oriented care. I always mention that it's provided by a team of people, but I realized a lot of people don't know even what we mean by that. So that's something I want to explain, because Barbara, one thing that I've loved about hospice care is the fact that it's provided by a team of people with different training and different expertise who come together to take care of one person.
Well, and if you think about it, our medical model, our medical system is based on physical care. And so doctors and nurses are really considered the key in our medical model. But hospice is different because dying isn't about just the physical, it is an emotional, spiritual experience. And so you really want, and that's what hospice provides, is a multidisciplinary group of people. You don't want just a doctor and a nurse, because you need the support and guidance of a social worker, of a chaplain, uh, home health aide. And yes, that's physical, but they're great listeners. And it's more than just pills and procedures.
And it's interesting because even in the era that I trained in, there was an emphasis, I think it really just began on whole person care, that we were that we were taught about, that supposedly each of us as doctors were supposed to provide whole person care for the body, mind, and spirit of each patient. But we were never trained to provide care for anything other than the physical body. Like, oh, it always sounded like a great concept, but we didn't have the training to address other areas in the patient's life that might be important when they're going through an illness. And that's, I think, one of the things that made me feel at home when I got to hospice is, oh, hospice actually does whole person care. It takes care of the entire person and the family and looks at all of those needs. And I was elated when I discovered that. I didn't know that about hospice till I got there, and I found out, like, oh, this is what feels right to me, and probably how all of medicine should actually be practiced.
Should be about the person,
Hmm.
um, not just the physical body that the person lives in, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we are familiar with the idea, say a person who's hospitalized with a serious illness, they may end up having multiple doctors who take care of them, specialists who take care of them. And that may seem like it's team-oriented care, but it's not really, because those practitioners they each operate in their own silo. One person looks only at the heart, one's only looking at the kidneys. And in some ways, that's kind of the worst type of care, because there's no communication. They're not looking at the patient as a whole. They're not putting all the information together. So hospice is the opposite, where we have people with different expertise who see the patient, but they communicate and they come to decisions together and come up with the treatment plan and care plan together.
Well, and if you think about it, our medical model takes care of diseases
Hmm.
that people have. And hospice and end of life doulas and anyone working in end of life takes care of people that happen to have diseases. And when you're taking care of people, then it becomes more than just about the physical. And, we are emotional, spiritual beings, and that those areas need healing and support also.
Yes, and as we've emphasized before, hospice is about comfort care, and in a sense that healing, emotional and spiritual healing, more than curative care. So that's what really separates us from the rest of medicine, which focuses on trying to find a cure for whatever's happening with the physical body.
And wouldn't it, as you said, wouldn't it be wonderful if all of our medical environment looked at the person who happens to have a disease, not just the disease? And maybe
Yes.
someday that'll happen.
Yes. Well, we're going to break down the members of the hospice team, because this is a question I've had a lot. Like, wait, who was that lady who came yesterday? What did she do again? Why was she there here? And so, um, let's see. I'm not sure the best how to break it down. If it's best to start maybe from the patient's experience, that the first person they might encounter in hospice might be an intake nurse, because sometimes there are nurses who focus primarily on admitting a new person to hospice who might only, I mean, is that in your experience, who might only see the patient one time, or?
It has become that. It didn't used to be. It used to be the primary care nurse is the one that did the intake, and she was with the family forever. And old fashioned that I am, I really like that, because you want to create a bonding, a connection from the moment you ring the doorbell. And with just an intake nurse, um, yes, you're doing business, but you're not building a relationship.
Mhm.
And I, from personal experience, just last year had hospice for my husband. And the admission nurse came, she and the social worker, which was great that a social worker and the nurse came. But they just did the intake and it was, well, it was on the weekend. So it's like 3 days from now, your primary care nurse will come. And that's where the bonding is. So hospice really lost an opportunity of 3 days
Mm.
to building the trust that that is part of what hospice does is build a trust. So yes, I got sidetracked there, but
Well, I agree with you completely. So I think the intake nurse's role is to fill out all the paperwork, right? It's doing the paperwork, but I always have this concern. What if the patient and the intake nurse just find a sudden rapport right away and they really like the intake nurse and then find out I'll never see her again. She won't be taking care of me. That seems like we've already introduced a disappointment into the service that we're providing.
oh, if I were on ground level anymore, like I used to be, I would not have intake nurses. And I would have the primary care nurse and the primary social worker, and they would be assigned, this would be their family. You
Mhm.
don't want different nurses on every visit. You want one nurse, one social worker, one chaplain, so that that team is incorporated with the family. It's not strangers. You become a team. So I would start building that rapport from the moment that the doorbell rings.
Yes. And then usually the person the patient would see next would be their nurse, hopefully their primary care nurse, maybe a few days later, who's going to be doing their care, but who will have lots of other paperwork still to fill out and questions to ask and getting to know the patient. But hopefully that's the nurse who will be guiding their care throughout the stay in hospice and making decisions for them and helping to figure out the plan of care.
Well, and the nurse, the primary care nurse is basically top dog. I mean, she or he is orchestrating and taking the information, doing the information gathering, and then bringing that back to the team of social worker, chaplain, home health aide. And then ideally is they develop a plan of care together.
Yes.
I think is really important in it's important in all care, but I was end of life care specifically because you're not just taking care of the patient, you're taking care of the family, and where the patient may need some physical bowels addressed or some physical something addressed. At the same time, the social worker can be addressing maybe some financial issues or healthcare support issues. So it's definitely team,
Mhm.
definitely team.
And the nurses, I just want to emphasize, are really well trained in most hospices in symptom management, so pain management, and that it means titrating medications, combining medications to get relief of symptoms to help keep patients comfortable. And the nurses that I've worked with, especially the seasoned ones with lots of experience, were just so good at it, so good at being creative and coming up with solutions for issues that were causing discomfort for the patient. And not all nurses are alike in their training or their level of experience, so we don't always have that. But the goal is that the nurses really have an expertise in symptom management.
Well, and there's a difference between medically taking care of someone in their home and taking care of someone in a facility or in the hospital. Um, in in the home, you don't have everything at your disposal. You have to be creative and
Hmm.
inventive um, in providing good care in the home. In a hospital or a facility, basically you snap your fingers and go, oh yeah, I need this, and it's there. Um, where it takes a really creative um, healthcare worker to work an end of life and to work in hospice or to be an end of life doula.
Yeah, and it's work that it's not suited for every person. You have to kind of be willing to fly by the seat of your pants sometimes and to go it alone and be out there in the field with a patient and their family when things are falling apart and to, you know, keep stay calm and make decisions in the moment and be really creative and figure things out as you go. And so not everyone is comfortable in that kind of situation.
Well, I used to stand on the front porch before I'd ring the doorbell and I'd say, Dear God, I seek to heal, not hurt, because you never know what you're going to find on the other side of the door. And you've got to be creative thinkers and think on your feet at all times. It's challenging, but oh so rewarding, or it was for me. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, and you may have seen 10 other patients with the same diagnosis as this patient you're going to see, but it's completely different every time because of people. People are different and unique. Their lives are different, their families are different. And so I honestly felt like I learned something every day on every visit. I encountered something new that I had to think about differently. And that's what actually made the work so rewarding is that it's never boring, always something interesting.
Yeah, it's I loved it, obviously, and it was a challenge. Um, but it was also, for me, it was like school, you know, because we didn't have the knowledge when I was doing it. And so my patients taught me, and their families taught me end of life care. And I think that there's a gift that a healthcare worker um, can use, maybe, if that's the word. Um, and that is to be open to learning new things. You never know it all. And particularly when you're caring for someone in their home, is to be open to learning and doing things new and different.
That is so true. And just such a good point. And I think why hospice attracts people who are more open-minded, free thinkers, and really tolerant and patient with other people and accepting of, other people's choices of how they live and where they live, and uh, and able to come in and be present in the moment and go with the flow of whatever's happening in that home or with that family.
Yeah, there isn't any, lists of, okay, we do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the work's done. It's, you've got to be open and imaginative uh,
Yeah.
in how to provide care.
And now I'm just going to interject a little bit about the medical director, the physician involved on the team, which is really different now, I believe, than it was when I was in hospice because my role on the team was to see every patient as the hospice physician, which, and I don't think that happens these days. Most hospice doctors don't even visit the patients. They hear a presentation from the nurse and they sign a form. So I felt like I got trained by the nurses. I made visits with the nurses and learned from them about how to provide patient care, which is why when I say how much I loved it, because I got to be I got to be present for many of the experiences that nurses would get to have too. And I don't think a lot of hospice doctors necessarily get that nowadays. But the doctor is part of the team because we have to have doctor signatures to certify the patient for hospice, to admit them officially to hospice, and to approve all the orders for medications. And in my case, I felt like I added a lot to the team because I studied a lot about pain management and symptom management too, to bring expertise to the team. But once again, I honestly don't know. I don't know how much the physician contributes to the team these days. I don't know if you're familiar, Barbara.
I am not. I don't know. Um, I I have the feeling that it's more, as you pointed out, an administration role. You have to be at the team meeting and kind of listen. And it's not the primary care physician is still the one in charge of the care, or at least is, I should ask, because it used to be the primary care physician is the one that increased the medicines or decreased and made all the decisions. And the hospice director just kind of overseed or spoke up if he thought it or she thought it was inappropriate. I don't know today
Yeah.
how active a role they play other than administration.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I just know that I was active. I saw every patient, so I was involved in every patient's care, which is what made it so worthwhile and rewarding for me.
And for the patients and family,
Mhm.
you
Because
know.
I did feel that it was important because a lot of patients had concerns like, who's my doctor now? Like I was seeing my oncologist every week and now they told me I don't need to come back again. Do I not have a doctor? And so even going for one visit and saying, I'm your doctor now. And I'm here and I'm on the ship with you and I'm going to help out with these decisions. And even I did feel, I mean, I will say the nurses basically ran everything because the I worked with nurses with 15 years of experience, and they, as I say, they taught me everything and I trusted them totally with decision making and guidance. But there were times when they would feel in a bind and call me and we'd brainstorm together, and it was nice for them to feel like, well, someone's there as a backup for them if they're feeling uncertain or seeing something they hadn't seen. We could just chat together and work it through together.
And that's good care. That's good, holistic, working together care. And I'm sorry we're losing that because
Yeah,
it's really an important component of quality care.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So, well, so here we are, we're talking about it, but we're not totally sure of, probably every hospice is different actually, because I do know some doctors who still work with hospices who do make home visits and see patients. I mean, I know I've met a handful of doctors in the last few years who still do that. So it really depends. It probably varies from one hospice to another.
Which is
But
why I recommend shopping for your hospice. You just don't pick one out of the yellow pages and call, or because the hospital uses it, this is shop hospices because they have criteria they have to meet, but there's leeway and there's differences between hospices. So shop. If you wouldn't go to a car dealer and buy a car just because someone said that's the car. You shop a car, you shop for appliances, you shop for clothes, and yet we don't shop for healthcare, and we should.
yes, yes, definitely. So as we were saying, it's the primary care nurse is really the the captain of the team, more or less, with the physician playing a variety of roles in the background if needed. Um, but right alongside with the primary care nurse, I feel like the home health aide has such an important role. And I always felt like we learned so much information from the home health aide who spent so much intimate time with the patient and family. 'Cause they're responsible for hygiene, helping the patient bathe and get dressed. Um, and always the home health aide would come with some story or bit of information that none of the rest of us had heard before.
There's an intimacy when you're giving someone a bath, or helping him to the toilet. It becomes um, a closeness that really, I think the home health aides are closest to the patients and the family than any of the team members. I think they're the key because they're there longer. They're an important part of the team because they're the eyes really when no one else is there.
Yeah. And, oftentimes it's interesting. There were things we found patients would not tell the nurse or me. They didn't, they felt, I don't know what it was, but like a little bit of reverence for the medical team, the nurse and doctor, like, well, I'm not going to complain to them. But the home health aide comes and says, the patient hasn't been taking that medication because they can't stand the taste of it. So they just stop taking it. It's like, well, they didn't tell us that, but they confess it to the home health aide, and we get really valuable pieces of information from them.
And think about how much that helps the caregiver in the home, the primary caregiver, having that a person come in and help with the bathing and the hygiene and it gives the caregiver a break in their 24-hour around the clock care.
And I would bet a lot of teaching goes on. I bet the home health aide is teaching the caregiver. They're working side by side and shows some little tips to the caregiver of here's what you can do to take better care of their skin, or here's how you can help turn them on their side more easily if you need to. And it's just such a valuable relationship.
Oh, yes, it is.
And so this will horrify you as it did me, but I was a consultant for a hospice talking with administrators who said, we've decided we're just going to rotate all of our home health aides so that every patient sees a different home health aide, each week so that they get to know all of them. And that way we can adjust our schedule more easily because maybe one home health aide needs a vacation. So we're going to substitute other people. We're just going to rotate home health aides randomly. And I couldn't believe they were saying that. And I said, you have missed the point entirely of the relationship that forms, why the patient needs to see. I mean, of course, there might be times when their home health aide can't come and someone substitutes, but to say every time it might be someone different that they've never met before who's randomly going to come to their home. It was shocking to me how the administrator sort of missed the importance of that relationship.
Oh, that's appalling because the home health aide is doing the most intimate physical contact uh, with a person. And you can, as a patient, you can relax with the familiarity of this person that get comfortable with. And a stranger every time would just is appalling,
Hmm.
just appalling, because that actually hurts rather than helps in my mind.
Yes, yes, I agree with you. And this is a case, well, we can talk about the fact behind all of this. There's an administrative team back at the hospice office kind of running things behind the scenes, the financial aspects, the business aspect of the hospice, whether it's a nonprofit or for profit. And the best hospices I worked for had a former hospice nurse as the chief executive officer of the administration, who understood hospice inside and out, knew everything the staff was dealing with, and could make the very best decisions for the organization as a whole. But I saw a trend toward putting someone with a business degree into that role who knew nothing about hospice, had not even really understand what it was hospice did, was just coming in to improve the business practices without having proper respect for the service and the care that was being offered.
Yeah, that's happening way too often.
Yeah.
It's way too often. Um, I would like to see everyone in the agency down, not down, including the receptionist and the telephone operator, everyone in the agency before they're in their position, that they have end of life training, as part of their orientation, so that they understand end of life and the real extensiveness of the care that's provided. Um, and that's not happening. Not happening.
And so while these people in administration don't do any of the patient care or see the patients, they can make decisions that affect how the nurses and home health aides carry out their jobs. So the patient at home and the family at home won't be aware of that, but it could be, if the nurse doesn't come as often as they wish they would, that could be because an administrative decision was made, not because the patient isn't valued by the nurse or the nurse doesn't want to come and see the patient, but could be that someone else made a decision um, that is preventing that.
Well, and often you've got people that don't really understand end of life care, making decisions on how many patients can be seen in a day, or how many patients a nurse can have as a caseload, with the idea of dollar signs, not what really provides good care, in the quotas that they're giving their staff to fulfill. And that's becoming an issue.
Mhm. And this might be, I mean, we don't mean to just rag on on these newfangled hospices and the changes they've made, but something that is newer is the inclusion of end-of-life doulas in some hospices, which is a really good thing that I think can help extend the care of the of nurses and the medical team, to have end-of-life doulas who are also available. And they didn't exist when I did hospice, so that's something new. But I find it encouraging. The end of life doulas can bring in so many different services and different types of support to patients.
And time. They have more time. And that's, to me, is the most healing thing we offer, is time.
Yes, so I think if you're looking for a hospice and you find one that utilizes end of life doulas, I would see that as a real positive, because that could make a real difference in the experience that you have.
Yes. When you're searching, ask
And
about doulas. Yeah.
also, because I want to encourage hospices to include end of life doulas, and I want to include end of life doulas, I mean, encourage end of life doulas to reach out to hospices, to try to come together, because I think that is a good arrangement for where we are right now. I think that's important.
I do too. I'm with you.
All right. So the next team member we can talk about, and you alluded to it a little bit before, is the social worker, who I think sometimes can wear many different hats. Because some social workers are also like licensed clinical social workers who can actually work as counselors and can do counseling with patients and families. Others focus more on social services and making sure people have what they need. Some do all of those things.
Which is really, really important. Um, I'll tell you a story. When my mother was on hospice, um, I decided when I was taking care, one day I thought, I don't love my mother. And I'm crying, and she's in the living room in a hospital bed. And I've decided that I don't love her, never have. I called my social worker, and she came right over. We went in the bedroom and we sat there. She let me verbalize, she let me cry. And at some point, she said, and it's all these years later, I've never forgotten. She said, Barbara, you do love your mother. Love is also a verb, and
Mm,
you are doing for her, and that's loving her. And that made a huge, the
mm,
guilt was lifted.
yes.
That's the role social workers can play, um, particularly with the caregivers, to give them support and a place to talk and rant. And, it's wonderful. And I like to see them on the initial visit where they and the primary care nurse come together for the first visit, show that they're a great team. Um, and I would like to see more than just one social work visit per
Hmm.
family. That's required, but I'd like to see more.
Because I found that social workers can be a real treasure trove of resources too, community resources. Sometimes they know about all sorts of programs for the aging or for seniors, Meals on Wheels. I mean, they find out what does the caregiver need for extra support, what does this patient need, and they can help link the family and the patient with other services that they're aware of, and that other members of the team just don't have time or are not even as aware of those services. But the social worker has this unique role of filling in a lot of the gaps that are there. So getting to know, oh, you don't have transportation. Well, guess what? We have this free mobile taxi for patients and care. I mean, they know about these extra services, and that can be so helpful in addition to their ability to just be good listeners and problem solvers. So I think the social workers are also tend to be really creative and think in the moment because they could be asked to fill lots of different roles.
A very important part of the team.
Yeah, and so the social worker brings their own unique expertise, and unfortunately, I mean, many hospices have one social worker who has to see all of the patients on the hospice, which is a pretty big load. And even though, as we're saying, it'd be nice if they could make more than one visit, but they may be really overworked and overloaded, and so they might focus in on the patients and families with the greatest need, but they could actually be beneficial to every patient and every family.
Absolutely. Um, if the caregiver can have a sense of someone's got my back, someone's looking out for me and what is happening here. And I think that is a big part of the role of a social worker, is to have that primary care person feel that they're going to guide them and support them and get them the best that they can for during this experience. We tend to think the nurse looks at the patient and educates the caregiver, but the social worker supports
Hmm.
the caregiver. It's kind of like the social worker is the caregiver's person.
Hmm. Yeah, that's such a good point. And it's just so valuable and also so valuable to the team as you're meeting together and coming up with a plan for the patient to get input from the social worker of things that the rest of us might not have thought about or looked at. And even as the person who is tapped into the caregiver and can tell the rest of us like this is what the caregiver is going to need, be aware of this and pay attention. And then I think maybe the most misunderstood role in hospice is the chaplain. And so I love talking about that because I think just the word, the name chaplain, scares some people away because they associate a chaplain with religion without understanding chaplains are not representative of any particular religion. Their role is really to help with the spiritual needs of a patient. And whether you're religious or not in any way, everyone has spiritual needs, needs to feel that life has meaning, need to feel connected to other people, needs for emotional healing and for love and forgiveness. And those are the things the chaplain can help with.
Oh, absolutely. So underappreciated and underutilized. And like you said, you think that, and I'm thinking of a gentleman who I was telling him about the chaplain, and he said, I don't want anyone to come and sell me any God stuff
Mm-hmm.
because that's how chaplains are looked at. And it's so not true. So not true. They're there to just be there. Sometimes you don't even have to say anything, but to be there and just support. And as we're dying, in the months before death, before labor starts, we're looking at our life. We're saying, what have I done? Who have I touched? What has life all been about?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the chaplain can be that person you bounce those questions off of. He or she isn't going to have any answers. They're going to have great listening ears and guidance for you to process. What have I done? Who
Mm-hmm.
have I touched? What is life about?
And again, a person with the time to sit and listen, which is crucial because the other members of the team are busy. They have a whole list of things to do. And where they may fall short is sometimes just being able to sit down, relax, and listen to the whole story and let the patient talk and tell them about an experience that happened. And the chaplain is the person who can do that so well. And I mean, sometimes even help people make sense of life and why things happen or what happened to them and help them see through it more clearly. And I think it's such a wonderful role and so important. And it kind of breaks my heart when I see patients and families turn down the chaplain visit because they don't understand it. They don't understand what it's for.
Well, and life is a billion piece jigsaw puzzle,
Hmm.
particularly as end of life is coming to an end. We're trying to put those pieces together, trying to make sense of this puzzle of life. And I can't think of anyone better than to help put those pieces together than a chaplain.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking minister, I'm not talking priest, I'm talking chaplain. And that's it. A lot of people don't even understand the training is different
Hmm.
for a chaplain than it is for a minister or a priest. It's different. And people don't understand that either.
Yeah. Maybe we need a new name for that role. I was just remembering a story of a man who refused a chaplain visit, but and everyone tried to talk him into it and wanted him, everyone was worried about, how's he going to deal with forgiveness or with meaning or important things in life? But it turned out the only thing he seemed to care about was baseball. He talked about baseball constantly, and everyone said, how do we get him to stop talking about baseball so we can talk about other things that are important? And finally, we realized, wait, baseball is what he's telling us has meaning. Baseball is like spiritual for him. Let's let him talk about baseball. So that became a whole new approach. He could talk about baseball every time we come, all day, if that's what matters to him. And in the end, he came full circle through his talks about baseball back to how he'd been estranged from his son years ago and had regrets that he never got to take his son to a baseball game. And it was like, aha, baseball was the key all along. But see, a chaplain would have easily been able to sit and listen to the baseball stories and not have to push this man any direction and help him get to that place, because that's truly what they do. They just listen and they hold space and provide this safe container. So, so that's our team. I think we covered it. We covered everything on the team. And I just wanted to emphasize, we're already kind of starting to run out of time. I wanted to emphasize that the team ideally comes together and meets as a whole. And in my day, it was every other week we met and discussed all of our patients. Is it the same now? Do you know?
I don't know. In my day, it was every week,
Hmm.
every Monday morning. An hour and a half team meeting. Um, so that we would know what had gone on over the weekend
Mm-hmm.
and what lay ahead in the week. I don't know how often the team is required to meet via Medicare regulations.
Yeah. Well, that's the value of all of this, is that it isn't like what I was describing in a hospital where each person just does their own thing with the patient. It's all of it. Everyone gathers information. We come together in a team meeting and everyone shares their perspective on what's going on and adds a piece to that puzzle. And that's where I just saw it was amazing sometimes how it became so clear what this patient really needed and what direction to go and what we should emphasize once we got a full picture by hearing what everyone else had learned in their visit.
Well, and at those Monday morning meetings and hearing everything that had occurred the week before and all these different inputs, then we could also determine how we were going to proceed in the week, in the
Mhm.
care, in what the needs were for each individual family, based on not just a nurse assessment, not just a social worker assessment. It was all the ideas that came together. And as a team, they all have the same goal. It isn't like you had different people coming in with different goals.
Yes.
And I think that's a value of the team meetings, is so that everyone's on the same page for the care that you're going to give this family, because there isn't any textbook. Here's ABCD, here's how you provide patient care at end of life, because each individual is different, and each family is different. Therefore, each approach to care and each care offered is.
Hmm. Yes. And that team meeting for me, there was just a certain magic about it. I don't know that if I should use that word or not, but that's how it felt to me when we would come together and get such a clear picture of what was happening, the journey for this patient and the family, and kind of what to expect next and how to plan. Like maybe they need an extra home health aide visit or they need an extra nursing visit. And we knew how and when things were changing so that we could respond to that.
Yeah, this is really important. And I don't know today, I think most agencies have um, their own team for on call
Hmm.
rather than what we did was we alternated and we were all on call at different times. But that team meeting is vital for the nurses that are on call because the goblins come out at 3 o'clock in the morning
Hmm.
and they need to know, they need to have a current history of what's happening. And that comes from the team meeting.
Yes. And the other thing that happens in that team meeting is just the bonding of the staff because when you're all working together for the same purpose and the same cause, it's pretty powerful and you feel really supported by the other people that are there on your team and even though you make visits alone all by yourself with the patient, you know you have the whole team behind you. There this whole team who knows the patient, who is watching what's happening, and so you don't really feel so alone when you're out there making those visits.
And because of the team, if you run into a situation in the home that you think, boy, I don't quite know how to address this. So you get in your car and you drive around the corner and you call um, someone uh, on the team and say, this is what's happening. What do you think? And so you're not the only one on this island taking care of someone. You can reach out for ideas, and those people you reach out to have the same knowledge that you do.
Mhm. And of course, when we talk about hospice care in this way, we're talking about the ideal of what we see as the ideal and the intention of how hospice should be delivered. And always there are, there are flaws and things don't go the way that they should, and people make mistakes and things fall apart. So it's possible people will have different experiences with their hospice team than the way we describe it because we're talking about the intention behind it and how things should happen. But it's always should be the goal that everyone working in hospice should be trying to attain. As far as I'm concerned, everyone should be working toward creating this ideal form of care, even though it doesn't always happen this way.
I agree. It's most people who work in end of life are working there because their heart tells them to work there, not their mind, but their heart says, I want to do this. And because of that intention, I think most of the people that are employed by hospices are so well intended, intention, so well that we are really blessed to have, we being society is really blessed to have these wonderful heart driven people to assist and help us as end of life comes. And that's the essence of what hospice is about, is to support and guide in the best possible way someone and their family as end of life approaches.
Mm-hmm.
Most of those people who are helping are heart driven. They've got knowledge, but they're heart driven.
Mm-hmm. So true. And I guess like our hope and our intention for talking through this is so that people who are considering hospice, I want people out there who don't know very much about hospice to recognize that this is a chance to participate in a really unique delivery system for healthcare. It's unlike anything else, any other type of healthcare that you could experience. And it's phenomenal and it could change everything about how you and a loved one experience the end of life. if you give hospice a chance, shop for the right hospice, like you said, Barbara. Look for the best that you can find, and recognize there's a whole team of people caring for you, and even see yourselves as we're part of the team too. We're in this together. We're all on this team. We're all trying to make this be the best end of life experience that it can possibly be.
I couldn't have said it better. It's beautiful, just beautiful, because that's what it's all about, to create a sacred experience
Mhm.
that will families will carry forever as a sacred memory. That's really the essence of what we who work in end of life are trying to achieve is, we don't have any role models on what it's like to die. So we come with fear. And if we can neutralize the fear with support, with knowledge, we can really help those remaining have a sacred memory that they'll carry forever.
Mm.
That's
So,
our work.
so true. So true. Well, thank you, Barbara. I feel like I hope we did a good job of educating people a little bit more about the hospice team. But I wanted to mention again your website, bkbooks.com, because people can also sign up for your newsletter there, right? So they can get news in their inbox from you, your beautiful blogs that you write. But again, they should go there, watch the videos. There's some lovely informative videos there, and buy Barbara's books.
Oh, thank you for this conversation. It's always a pleasure, and I think we do good work.
I think so. It feels good to me, and I love talking hospice with you because I don't meet that many people like me with a long history that goes way back who has this perspective on it, and so we have a good time together. And I thank you,
You,
my friend.
my friend too. Be safe.
Thank you.